Welcome back. Now to Washington, D.C., where former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin has been jailed for 22 years, or 22 and a half years, that is. He was sentenced on Friday for the murder of George Floyd. Floyd was killed last year in May. Video footage of the incident went viral, sparking widespread outrage about police brutality, particularly against African Americans. So for some reaction on the sentencing, we're joined now by Johanna Leblanc, who's a national security law and foreign policy expert. Johanna, always a pleasure speaking to you. Very good evening to you. Derek Chauvin handed a sentence of about 22 and a half years in prison. Was just, or can one can say, was justice actually served for the murder of George Floyd?
Thank you, Faith, for having me on. First and foremost, to put this into context, we have to understand that Chauvin was convicted of second-degree unintentional murder, also third-degree manslaughter, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. And the possible sentencing outcomes in this case were as follows. 40 years. That would have been the maximum sentence, and then 30 years as argued by prosecution, and 0 years as argued by defense, and that was not going to happen. And the people of America were not going to stand idle to have seen the judge hand down a 0-year sentencing for the murder of George Floyd. But in any event, I think that the sentencing sent a signal, even though the judge said this is not about sending a message to anyone. This is about applying the law, which he said correctly, because the job of a judge is to apply the law to the facts. But at the same token, you cannot negate, when it comes to legal proceedings, oftentimes, directly and indirectly, you're sending a message. You're trying to deter these acts from happening in the future.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, the sentence in itself is said to exceed the Minnesota sentencing guidelines range of about 10 years. So though the judge did emphasize on how this was not a sentence based on emotion, nor was it a sentence based on public opinion. However, by exceeding the guidelines, does that not then prove that very same statement false? Do they actually buckle under the pressure of human skepticism, especially of the policing system?
No, I would disagree with you, Faith. I don't think it exceeded. It was just 10 years. When we look at roughly 12.5 years, that could have been what under Minnesota law Chauvin could have been sentenced to. However, I don't think that the 20 years exceeded by no means, because when we look at the possible sentencing for the different convictions that he was convicted of, I think that this is in alignment. In fact, some would even argue that he should have been sent to jail for the max for 40 years, right? Because we know people right here in America who have been sent to jail for a much longer period of time for lesser crimes. That is just a reality. But I think now that we have a conviction on the books and Chauvin has been sentenced, obviously his legal counsel will appeal the decision. That is expected. However, there is also the legislative aspect of this. Currently, the House of Representatives, the United States House of Representatives, rather, has passed the George Floyd Act, which one would stripped police officers from having the highest level of protection that an officer can receive, which is qualified immunity. And two, it would make it easier for officers to be prosecuted for acts of misconduct and for the use of excessive force. Now, the Senate has not touched the legislation. We hope that it is passed to ensure that America becomes a better nation, a nation where everybody will be treated with a certain level of dignity. Because, Faith, the reality is that the data shows us very well that police officers here in America has the ability to de-escalate situations to the point where they don't always have to use force, lethal force that will end to the death of individuals. Yeah. But when interacting with Black suspects, we see time and time again there's often a murder that occur. But there's another aspect, Faith, and that is the hearts of men. And unfortunately, I don't care how much of a progressive court that we have here in America, how much of a progressive president you have at the White House, or a progressive United States Congress. You cannot legislate the hearts and the soul of men. So we as a people, whether you are in South Africa or right here in America, we need to have a discussion about implicit biases. Why do we have the beliefs that we have about certain people that often lead us to behave a certain way towards them? And until we have that genuine conversation with ourselves, I don't think that we're going to see much progress. But nonetheless, the law is the law. It's a tool that when you have been harmed, you can bring forth in front of a judge so that you can have redress for some form of relief.
Well, Johanna, certainly it is a conversation that will definitely be ongoing, and hopefully now the precedent has been set regarding police brutality and the way in which police carry out their roles in America, particularly against people of color.